Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second masterclass on behalf of Wines of Portugal. Today, we're going to be exploring Arinto with Antonio Braga, who, as soon as he joins, I will call him in, and we're going to start our conversation. Please feel free to ask your questions at any time. I want to talk about the market itself, how to enjoy Arinto, but also talk about viticulture, winemaking. And we are really lucky to have Antonio. I will introduce him as soon as I see him. He's a young winemaker and he's in charge of some of the most important brands here is in Portugal. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. So as I said, feel free to ask your questions and you will join us. Here it is, Antonio.
How are you?
Welcome. I was just about to introduce you. I wanted to wait for you so you can correct me if I say anything wrong. But anyway, welcome to you and thanks for joining us on this live about Arinto on behalf of Wines of Portugal. Antonio was born in Lisbon and he did also his food engineering degree first and then followed by enology and viticulture. He started his career in 2003, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Like many young winemakers, many good winemakers of Portugal, he had a lot of experience outside Portugal, in California, New Zealand, Argentina, I think Chile as well. And he joined Sograpi in 2007, and he's been a Quinta de Leda for 10 years.
Yes, that's it.
Is that all right so far?
You're very well prepared, Lucio. Great introduction.
But more importantly, since 2007, he is the winemaking director of Sograpi and looking after Vinhos Verdes, Down, and also Lisbon, that we're going to be talking today. So great welcome to you. And I wanted to I start with a question. I want to provoke you a little bit on this question. Because Arinto is the third most planted white variety in Portugal. And in Portugal has a lot of exceptional varieties, Encruzado, Avarinho, etc. And I think, in your opinion, how do you assess the quality credentials of Arinto? Is it one of the top 3, top 5?
I would say definitely. When we speak about white wines, white grape varieties, surely it's along with Alvarinho and Encruzado. I would say those 3 are the most important ones. Arinto is not often seen as a varietal wine, so you will not see a lot throughout Portugal. Generally, it's used alongside with other grape varieties. So making part of a blend, as we do it in Portugal in several wines. But of course, in some regions like Bucelas, it's mainly Arinto. But it will step up in the spotlight soon, I hope. And it's been around for years, and so it's and the fact that is all over the country also tells us something about it. So if everyone is planting and taking advantage of it in different terroirs, it's because it's good and because the results are good. So at the end, I think of course it's under the 3 the best ones.
But this is one of the things I sometimes think, because it appears in every corner of Portugal, in most regions, and can it be perceived as a grape variety as trivial? Could it be in danger of being underestimated, or does it have all the respect it deserves at the moment, or not?
It's a very good question. So I think it plays very different roles in the different terroirs, and sometimes it's maybe it's in the blend, and it's not very aromatic generally. It's in the blend and doesn't expresses it too much. So somehow it's delegated to a second place. But as I said, plays a different role in several terroirs, and so it can be elevated if the winemaker, and if it fits with the brand and with all the communication. I think it has all the features to be on top.
Okay. In your opinion, if you compare is it possible to compare with another variety, international variety, I think similar profile or not?
I think so. I think you could put it together. Sometimes in the aging, it touches a little bit with some Rieslings from the Mosel. It has some of the oily character of some of the Rieslings, so it will have some touch points with those Rieslings. Also, you can find some touch points with textured Chardonnay. When it ages in oak, you'll have some touch points as well. So it's always more in the weight part of the grape varieties than in the fresher or cooler. Although it's very cool in terms of acidity, in terms of mouthfeel.
Okay. Before we go into viticulture, people already asking a few questions. I'm going to try to make a note of the questions. If I don't ask your questions, please, towards the half end of the live, can you please repeat your questions, because I've got a few questions in terms of viticulture and winemaking. Let's talk a little bit about terroir itself. How does Arinto behaves in different climates?
As I told you before, it plays different roles. For instance, we in Bucelas, so Grap in Bucelas started 2 years ago in 2019 when we acquired Quinta da Romeira. So in Bucelas we are giving our first steps, in fact. But we as a company, and me in particular, have been working with Arinto in other regions, in the Douro, in the Vinhos Verdes, in Bairrada, and I can tell you that, for instance, in the Douro, it always plays the acidity and the energy part of the blend, whereas in the Vinho Verde it will play a role of density, of volume. In Bairrada, it's always tightness and the intensity and vibrancy, whereas in Bucelas, I think it's a mix of all those expressions, and that's probably the best terroir for Arinto. But basically, I think two key factors in terms of terroir for me: the soil, which should be clay limestone mixture and should have some slope, and then you should have also some breeze, if it's Atlantic breeze, better, because you will need some aeration to go through the canopy to aerate a little bit that tight bunch that it has. So Arinto has these tight clusters. And you will need some aeration to go through that canopy. So the Atlantic breeze, it's very important also to keep the acidity. So cool nights, very important as well.
Okay. Great, because you already answered my next two questions. One question.
Sorry.
No, but this is good, because we can cover more things. Because I want to ask you specifically about climate and then soil. But you already answered. I think is anything with limestone it's great. And I agree with you when you talk about Bucelas. I think it does reveal some amazing characters in terms of its profile in Bucelas. There's a question here from if I'm not mistaken, from a friend of mine from a good friend in São Paulo. Arinto's got a variety of very long cycle and high acidity. Anyway, the question is, have you tried to make late harvest wines with it, with botrytis? It's quite hard because the skin is quite thick, isn't it? To get botrytis?
And as I tell you before, we just arrived. So we are in Brussels since 19. So we made 2 vintages for the moment, and I like a lot when I get to a new region to focus on what's really our mainstream, what we should be consistent, and then when we have confidence, when we are solid, we should go to other things and experiment and everything else. Saying that, this year we made a little experience with some part of Arinto, which was more starting to get a little bit botrytis, and then we dried a little bit the grapes and everything. And it's a funny experience, but for the moment, only experiences. We will have time to discover. We are giving the first steps in the region in a very consistent and safe way, in order to get where we want to be. But for the moment, we are focusing on making very good Arintos in a mainstream, in a good sense. Right? No eccentricities, but make Arintos in a good and a solid way.
Good. Thank you, Antonio. There's another question here from Sergio. Hello, Sergio. Good to see you here. And it's also the question I had in my mind to ask you next. Sergio and I, we work together, so he's same wavelength as I am. But he's asking about the imprint of terroir. Is it possible to establish by tasting? If we have a blind tasting of different Arintos, is it possible to establish the terroir, its origin?
I think so. It can be difficult to guess exactly where it comes from, but as I was saying, Arinto is very plastic in terms of adaptation. So when you look at the Touriga Nacional, for instance, you will see a consistent aromatic profile of Touriga Nacional throughout the region, throughout Portugal, for instance, or even abroad. When you're looking to Arinto, it's more plastic, so it will show you different things regarding where it is based. So you will find some characters. The shape of acidity will change. The shape of acidity of an Arinto from the Vinho Verde will be much more linear, much more direct to the end of your palate. Whereas when you compare with the shape of the acidity in Brussels, it's much more wide, much more larger, much more integrated in the texture. So you will guess a little bit where it came from. You can try and guess. It will show you differences.
Excellent. Actually, we got 3 wines. Let me just switch the camera and share with you which wines we are looking at today. Hopefully, you guys can see it. There we are. We have a Covella from the Douro on the left, the green label, and then we have a wine from Marquês de Marialva from Bairrada, which is a Gran Reserva 2015 in the middle, and then we have your wine, Antonio, which we would like you to explore and talk to us about it in a bit. So this is what we have for you guys. Wonderful. I just wanted to give a little bit of context in terms of statistics, which I've got thanks to Sofia again, Sofia Salvador and Vinho Portugal. But Arinto, for those of you who don't know, I think this is the 3rd most planted white variety in Portugal in total. The last figures I've seen from the IVV, the Institute of Vine and Wine, it puts Arinto in 9th position in total. There are 5,394 hectares planted. And then I dig a little bit deeper, and I saw it that I don't think it will surprise you, Antonio, and most people that it's most planted in the Minho, obviously, in Vinhos Verdes, which has 3,430 hectares.
Yeah.
And then the second one, I was a little bit surprised, which was Alentejo. The second most planted.
In fact, it makes sense to give acidity, so it playing the role of acidity. to the Alentejo wines. So that's why it's so widely planted over there as well.
And then the third most planted is Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, and on that data, there was no plantings at all of Arinto in Down. But then I've sent some messages to friends of mine, and you may know, and I found one small vineyard of Arinto in Down. So I think it's planted most in every part of
and in Bairrada, you have also some vineyards in Bairrada. We own some hectares of Arinto in Bairrada as well. So it's quite well spread.
And the interesting thing, as you said, Anthony, it plays different roles in Douro. It gives the freshness to Malvasia, Viosinho, Rabigato, and so on. It lifts that. In Tejo, it's blended with Fernão Pires, and Barada, as you mentioned, with also Maria Gomez, etc. And Alentejo gives freshness to Antão Vaz and Ropero and other varieties, Peru, etc. And so on. I've tasted some. Someone sent me a bottle of a wine from Algarve, which I've been suspicious. This was about 3 or 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be alcoholic and dark. Actually, it was lovely. It was lovely. It had beautiful freshness. And I think one of the secrets, it had quite a fair amount of Arinto in the blend. And I think it did an amazing job in holding the whole structure together. So it's everywhere. But this is all give you an idea of where it's planted and so on. In terms of historical facts, I don't know if you agree with this, but textbooks said that the Romans brought Arinto to Portugal, and it's the highest genetic diversity is in Bruxelles, so we would presume that's where it comes from. I don't know if this is your understanding. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. Generally, the highest genetic density indicates that, and probably it comes from Bruxelles. There are more than 500 different clones of Arinto, so huge amount. And
that is something I want to ask about the clones, because I'm really interested on the clonal thing. We'll get a little bit more technical in terms of viticulture. But also, Sergio mentioned something about climate change. Also, I'm going to ask you that question at the end. You guys are really good today. Amazing questions. But I want to just, we talked about terroir and the imprint of how Arinto shows its terroir. And I have here this Covella, which I showed you earlier, the green label. And it's amazing because it's almost in the border with Douro. It overlooks the river. It's a beautiful property from 1500s. I don't know if you know the property. I'll be lucky to visit it a couple of times. And it's towards the southeast corner of Vinhos Verdes, bordering Douro. It's 10 kilometers away in the Douro. And this is a wonderful wine. It's really, it plays it's all about freshness. It's all about the elegance. I tasted the wine earlier. I made some notes. It's really restrained and elegant and subtle. Lovely citrus fruit, mineral. They play a little bit with the leaves that we spend quite a lot of time on leaves. So it's got lovely freshness. And using your analogy of Burgundy, if this is Burgundy, it would be right towards the north, almost like a Chablis-like style, really elegant and mineral. It's a delicious wine. It's again, there's no oak at all. It's just a lovely minerality from the granitic soil. Lovely wine. It really shows that freshness and very tight.
It's a wonderful property because it mixtures some of the Douro, but also with some of the Minho and some of the freshness. So it's a really good balanced property and a wonderful place for terroir expression of that Arinto. I had the opportunity to taste it some time ago, and I completely agree with you that balance and the leaf work that it has, it's amazing. It's very good.
Beautifully supple. And then on the second wine, that I'm going to leave your wines right towards the end, so people can wait and join us here until the end. But the second wine I've tasted just a second ago is that one. I'll reverse the camera so you guys can see the label again before we finish. And this is from Barada, from Adega de Cantanhede, with my friend Osvaldo, whom I spoke to this morning. So hello, Osvaldo, if he's here. This is it comes from a different plot, but the average age there is 15 years old, so fairly mature vine, Arinto vines. And it's hand harvested, very short skin contact, 4 hours. And then it goes, after press, half of it goes into oak, French oak, Allier, and half of it goes into stainless steel. And it stays there for 6 months. After that, the wine is blended, and it spends another 12 months this time the oak is not new, second fill. And if we're going back to the Burgundy analogy, one was Chablis, really cool, really more austere, more linear. This is more exuberant, powerful, much more oaky. The oak is present here. It's more of a showy, exuberant wine. It'll be more towards the southern part of Burgundy. But it's a good thing here because it's got fairly high acidity, 6.9 tartaric, it's fairly high, but it's really good work with batonnage, so it gives nice texture. So it's a really nice example. They only make this wine. It's quite a. This is the wine there in the middle of your. If I can't switch it now. I won't template. I was gonna switch for the label, but you saw it earlier on. I'll try to do it again later. But they only make 3 times in 10 years, so it's not done every year, and it's a good one. So Osvaldo, if you're watching, well done, great work, yeah. And Antonio, I want to ask you about viticulture. Let's focus a little bit about viticulture. What are the advantages of Arinto, of having Arinto in a vineyard? What are the good things?
Advantages.
Yeah.
Arinto can be productive. So in terms of if you're selling grapes by the kilogram as a grape producer, it has some production. So it can yield good yields. So
what are we talking about?
You can go in a fertile soil. You can grow 15 tons per hectare. That's big. That's big. You have to be careful because if with 15 tons per hectare you will have a much more diluted wine, but also you'll have challenges in terms of diseases, pressure. So you have to be careful with that. But more advantages that we could talk about having Arinto is that the acidity, especially in terms of warmer regions and warmer climates, it will preserve your acidity. It will give acidity to your blends, and also it will be consistent year on year. So Arinto, it's, I think, in my opinion, it's quite consistent. It has that long cycle, which can be a challenge some years when it rains during mid-season. So when the season changes.
And on the downside, what are the disadvantages?
You have to be careful with the tightness of the cluster. You have to aerate the canopy. So in terms of viticultural, you have always on top of it. You have to have the very good balance between square meters of leaves per kilogram of fruit. You have to have attention to that relationship. And if you have the help of some Atlantic breeze, it will help you to avoid a little bit the diseases. And then for us, specifically in Bucelas, in Quinta da Romeira, we have 75 hectares of Arinto in one property. We have 2 slopes, one facing north and one facing south. And the main challenge is to harvest within the window of harvesting, but it's always 75 hectares of almost one variety. So you have a short window. So it's a very pressured harvest because everything is ready mostly at the same time. You have differences between the north slope and the south slope, but they are 10-day differences, 15-day difference maximum. So you have to process all the grapes in a very short period of time. So that's and of course in a white wine and in a red as well, but in a white more specifically because of the acidity, timing is everything. So it's a challenge.
Antonio, you took over this property not long ago, and Nuno Cancela, he did some work in the 80s. He did lots of. I remember I spoke to him about this about 2 years ago, and I had a half-an-hour conversation about Arinto. It's like I read a whole book. I knew everything about it. But he did an amazing study in terms of clonal selection in the 80s, and at the time there was 250 or whatever. Now it's more than 500 or so. And you have and since then the property. I think we're gonna have to do a lot of work going forward in the vineyard, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So tell me about. Let's talk a little bit about clonal selection. What do you know now, and what are you gonna study? What are your plans?
So first of all, of course, all this work we're just starting in the region, and we are taking advantage of all the work made before us, and we have completely all that in our minds, and we are lucky ones, especially in my winemaking generation. I feel lucky to be winemaker in this time, because we are taking advantage of a lot of work done before us by Nuno Cancela, then Manuel Vieira was as a winemaker also in that estate. I'm a friend of both, especially of Manuel, because Manuel Vieira worked also at Sograp. I'm a good friend of him. So we have that lucky. We're lucky to follow their pathway and to take advantage of the previous work. But we know at the same time that there's still a lot of work to be done, and that's good. I really like to pick these projects where still a lot there's still low-hanging fruits that you can take advantage of it. And so we are investing in a vineyard. We will in the next couple of years replant a part of the vineyard, around 25 hectares. And we are taking advantage of all that genetic variety that Arinto has. So more than 500 clones. Nowadays, commercially, you have a mixture of 6-7 clones that are available to plant. In certified plant nurseries, you will find 6-7 commercial clones that we generally plant all together in a clonal mixture. But we are one of our key investments that we're going to make is to plant all the clones in one genetic field. So we will plant all those, and then we will investigate under those conditions in our terroir which are the clones that perform the best for our features, our characteristics, and then we will use our selection to plant the
I think Antonio's slides hiccup on his internet. Can you guys still hear me? I hope you can. Antonio, you there? Hey, there you are. Now you froze for a second, but it's okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, this work. Two very quick questions. How long will this work take? 10 years, 20 years?
So then we are starting next year working on it. So we already start studying the terroir, all the different units of terroir that we have in the state. We are starting to prepare soils next year, and we start planting in 2022. I think it will take at least 5-7 years to get first results, and then to go on with other. My vision is that in the next 15-20 years we'll have all the state replanted. We are also, so it's interesting, we are also with the other two varieties, which is Rabo de Ovelha and Esganacão. We are also planting genetic fields of those two varieties in order to preserve all the genetic diversity of those two. So it will be a wonderful work to be done in the next years. I'm excited with the future.
This is one of the things I think Portugal does extremely well, is preserving the genetic wealth and having so many clones, and that's going to be very good for the future, especially with climate change. And there's a question later on coming on climate change.
Sorry. We feel when we went and we got into Brussels with Romeira. Brussels is very small. It's 140 hectares. We own 75, so we feel responsible stewards of that region, and we will take it. We will take it personally. So we will defend it. We will preserve the diversity, and we are here to the long term. So that's our way to be in the business, and we're happy to do it.
Antonio, we have to be very careful because there are some masters of wine. I just saw some masters of wine on our live, so we have to be, pretty accurate with our information.
Yeah.
But there was a question here on the, no, joking, because I'm sure we are. There was a question with Joe Locke, who's a master of wine and buyer for Wine Society, in terms of recommending which we don't see so much Arinto in the UK. What are the recommendations? I've written an article a few months ago in a publication, and the wines that we have here, Covella, Marques de Marialva, and Morgado Santa Catarina, they are fabulous. But I also remember I've got a list here of Quinta das Pancas from Lisbon. Makes a good example. Maledinha, from a good example of
Alentejo.
From Alentejo. Adega Mine also made a good example. Those are some examples. There are many. So
Chocapalha, very good one.
Chocapalha also makes. I don't know anything else that you can think of, so people can go and grab some bottles of Arinto tomorrow.
Chocapalha is a really good one, and Adega Mine I really like it as well. I don't know. No, I think you covered. But the ones from Nuno Cancela are really good as well. Morgado de Bucelas, it's a really good one. So
yes. I tasted that last Sunday. I want to taste again this coming Sunday. It's a wonderful wine, and I'm doing a live in Portuguese, but that's another story. But also talking about Arinto. So let's talk a little bit about. We're halfway through. Let's talk about winemaking a little bit, and going back to the cellar. Before I do that, I need to maybe Joe, maybe she knows this, or maybe I'm sure she knows this, but Arinto was the first ever wine bought by the Wine Society. I don't know if and it was who told me that it was Nuno Cancela de Abreu.
It was the first one, really?
Yeah, it was the first one ever bought by Wine Society in 1874. I don't know if Joy is still here; she can confirm, or if she didn't know. That's a story that Nuno told me. So it's one of the great companies we have in the UK. Okay, let's go and talk about winemaking. What are the advantages of Arinto in a cellar, apart from bringing acidity? What else is good for? Joe is back. Thank you, Joe. It's 1874.
So in the cellar, it can play different roles as well as in terroirs, and even if it comes from, imagine from Quinta da Romeira, the north slope and the south slope, you can play with different characters. So you can go toward a more reductive style with the fresher, cooler grapes in order to have a more expression of aromatics. Always in the more reductive and protective style, but then you can go, if you want, towards a more textured style, going higher on turbidity when you're racking from the lees in the first decanting, and you can go towards a more textured wine style, aging in barrel. So again, the plasticity of the grape variety will help you to choose the style, and it's a question of tools and interpreting the grapes that you have in front of you. Of course, that all starts in the vineyards with different practices, with different exposures to sun, with different levels of production. And if you align everything since the vineyard, then in the cellar, and then in the commercial part of it, so you have to have the fit throughout all the value chain. You will find that Arinto will play so much different roles. So in Romeira, for instance, under those 75 hectares, we can do 3-4 different. If you have a matrix, you can put it almost four different styles of Arinto. When you have this textured and aromatics, you can play with those two, and they have so much different styles in the same grape variety. So I believe this plasticity, it's an advantage. Then the aging capacity, even in tank, in oak better, but even in tank, it's a grape variety that holds very well. So it keeps the freshness throughout the year, throughout the aging. So it's very strong. And another thing that I'm learning, it borns some of the wines they don't born beautiful. So you smell them and then you are maybe, is it good? It isn't. But in the aging, in the first 6 months, after the first 6 months, the wines get more and more amazing, and you go to the winery and you get more excited and more excited. It's incredible. The aging of the Arinto, it's incredible, the aging capability in cellar, and then after.
In Cruzado also is quite shy at the beginning, isn't it?
More shy than Arinto, in my opinion. Even more shy. So even more tighter and not as plastic as Arinto. So in Cruzado, I think it's more, in some senses, more character, because it's more that personality. It's more difficult to play different roles than Arinto.
Okay. Very good. Going on the other side, somebody just mentioned they had a bottle of Arinto from 1875. My gosh, if the levels are good, I'll be. I just found a new best friend.
Me too.
Anyway, Antonio, what is the going back to the other side? What are the disadvantages of Arinto?
In the cellar.
In the cellar.
You will have to pay attention with all the grape handling, pressing, because it's a grape variety with a lot of pectinase. I don't know if I can say pectinase in English. Pectins.
Pectins, yeah, pectin.
So there's a lot of pectins. So pectinase is the enzyme. So there's a lot of pectins and proteins. So it can be hard to decant, to settle during the first settle. So you have to be careful with all the handling of the grapes, with all the pressing, the press cycles, with skin contact in the press. You have to, if you want to do it, you have to be careful. And then when you are settling, you should have good temperature control, good chilling capability, power, in order to bring the temperature really down and to have the kind of settling that you want. You can want something with 50 NTUs, or you can want something with 200. There are different styles, so you should be careful with that. And then in terms of winemaking, from the settling on, it's the general preoccupations of a white winemaking. So I would not say that it has a lot of disadvantages, special disadvantages.
Is it okay in terms of nutrition? Do you need to correct the nutrition, or is it oxidative? Is it reductive?
There's so many conditions nowadays. There's so many yeasts. So, of course, if it comes from a poor soil in a warmer year, it will be more needy in terms of nutrition, and you will have to play also with yeasts, because there are yeasts that are more hungry than others. So you have to play with that. I would like, and we measured all the available nitrogen that we have for our yeasts before the ferment. I would like not to supplement at all, but sometimes you have to. So to deal with, I want my yeasts, but that's a general rule for me as a winemaker. But I want my yeasts to be comfortable in a white wine vinification, because we know their main job, their main life, their main occupation is to transform sugar into alcohol. That's their job. But then they have hobbies, which are producing aromas, texture, esters, so the higher alcohols, and those are hobbies. And one doesn't only make hobbies if your life, the first condition, is good. So you have to be in good conditions, a good life condition, and then you make your hobbies, and that's it. So I try to give my yeasts the best conditions, my life conditions, so they can have good hobbies.
One thing about, I'm not going to talk too much, but in terms of the yeast profile, people think, oh, the yeast can create flavor. No, the yeast can only reveal what the terroir has, and you can only enhance a little bit. And if it's not a question of trying to create a certain style, the terroir has to give you that, and then the yeast can enhance a little bit. But my question is, even if the terroir is a good terroir, talking about this Covella, for example, which is a more leaner style. If I wanted to produce a wine slightly more linear, more crisp, almost like more Chablis style, which yeast would you use? Is QA23 a good yeast, or would you use something else?
QA, it's good because it will express itself in different ways with temperatures. So it's quite respectful yeast when you use it at a slightly higher temperature than 14, 15 Celsius. So if you go to 16, it will 16, 17, it will protect your terroir quite well. So it's a good example. QA, which was selected in our Quinta in Azevedo. So QA stands for Quinta de Azevedo, which is a property of Sograp, where I'm the winemaker, in fact, in the menu. But it's a quite protective yeast. I think it's one of the best. D47 as well. It's a good terroir protectist.
If I want to make a more Burgundian, more a richer, denser, more Burgundy in style, like which would this D47 be the best one?
It's a good one for that profile. Also mixed with higher temperatures and higher turbidity in the settling. So those three factors, and then the most that you can with organic nutrition. So better if it comes from the vineyard. If not, all the addings to be organic, the best. But that's across all the top wines, I would say. And never forget vitamins like thiamine, and it's important. It's important in white wine fermentation.
And Antonio, there's a question here from someone. Do you know of Arinto? Thank you for the question. Do you know of Arinto being planted anywhere else in the world, as it's so versatile? It's a great question.
It's a great question that I don't know the answer, unfortunately. So I cannot help with that. I hope so.
If you don't know, I'll my experience, it's I don't see as much. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday from South America, a wine producer, and I said, "Have you thought about it? Because it's such a wonderful variety." But no, I don't see many. I know there's some planters in Barossa Valley.
Okay.
And there is one company in Heathcote, also in Australia. The only two companies that I know of who have Arinto outside Portugal. If anyone who's watching us, if they know, it would be lovely to help us also as a group to learn more about Arinto. But so far, it's the only two companies. And another question from Joe. Thank you, Joe. What is the ideal time? That's a good question to drink Arinto.
The ideal time?
Now.
Always.
There you go.
Depends on the style of the wine, of course. Too. You will have cooler ones for more fresher time of the year, more and gastronomically speaking, with more entrees and cooler kind of foods. But if you go towards a morgado with aging in barrel and all that, you can go towards always a good fish in the oven. So much more gastronomic, much more dense, much more intense, and with some aging, it's amazing.
It's a great question here. Is attitude and enthusiasm for aged wine? So the question linked to the previous one. Is the attitude and enthusiasm for aged white Portuguese wines changing?
Completely, and that's one of the when we entered in Bucelas and in Quinta da Romeira, that's one of the things. We know that those wines age beautifully. So, and we know that great wines in the world have to go through the aging test. You don't have amazing wines without amazing aging. So, of course, and it's completely on today. You know much better than me on the trend to have old wines and white wines. White wines age beautifully. It's incredible.
I think one thing, if people who are watching, if you want to be a step of everybody, Alvarinho, Encruzado, Arinto, buy some wines today and age and keep in your cellar. I did a tasting in Rio about a few years ago. And Brazil is known for red. It's a red wine country as it is China.
Yeah.
And I was doing a comparison test from the same producer, mostly red wines, and top producers, top vintages, the current vintage and an old vintage. And the wines were amazing. But one thing is, I just put a white wine there, and it's a producer that Joe just mentioned, Samuel Mendes. And I put an Alvarinho from current vintage, which at the time, like 2 or 3 years ago, and an Alvarinho from 2008. And it was amazing. And at the end of the taste, I asked people, 60 odd people, said which was your favorite wine and of the whole tasting. And I was shocked. It was the aged Alvarinho, and it aged beautifully. So I think it's a great question. I think the behavior is changing slowly, but not as fast as it should. And if you want to be ahead of the curve, go and buy and stick in your cellar. I have a few myself. So
completely.
There's more questions here. Thank you for the questions. An amazing questions. How is the best style of wine Alvarinho produced in your opinion? I think what's the best style? I think. What is it for you? What's the best style of Alvarinho in your opinion, Antonio?
The best style?
Yeah.
I think where Arinto expresses the best is when it ages a little in oak, some density, some texture, some wideness of palate, and then it will show beautifully in the first years of bottling, but then it will age wonderfully. We were talking about the 2008 Alvarinho. I tasted the Morgado in Magnum 2008 not so long ago, and it was amazing. So for me, that's the best style. And if it's from Bucelas, better.
Talking about Bucelas, shall we talk about your wonderful wine? We have just 10 minutes, so here it is. And tell us about your...
That one is the Morgado 2017, yeah. which is I would say a shared work with the previous winemakers that made this wine before us, because we bought the company in 2019. So when we got there, those wines were already made in the vintage, of course, and we made the blend, and we put it a little bit in our interpretation of what could be a Morgado Santa Catarina. So it was in fact made by Manuel Pires da Silva and Manuel Vieira and Maria Godinho. Those were the 3 winemakers from the previous company, and so I pick up the blend in the early January 2019, and it's a wine that comes basically from the slope facing south in Quinta da Romeira. So the north slope, which is facing south, it's where we can find the most dense and more textured Arinto within the state. Probably it's blend as well with some grapes from the south side in order to give some acidity. At least is that when we went to other vintages, 19 and 20, that's how we interpret the thing. And it has an aging in barrel, that time basically mainly in 225 liter barrels for 8 months. And then we made the blend with some wine that was, I remember around, I don't have the right number in my head, it was around 40% of wine without oak in stainless steel with lees, and that's it. So it shows beautiful. It's a wine completely in 3 years now, and it's beautiful. I already bottled the 1918. We don't have. I already bottled the 19. I'm quite happy with it, and we just finished the harvest of the 20. So wonderful wines, and this is, I would say, should be, and we are working on that to be the benchmark of a Arinto aged in barrel.
Good. That's a good objective to have. And in terms of style, for those of you guys who are watching, Covella was linear, if I haven't described it one word, and then the second wine, Marquês de Marialva, was exuberant, and this is in the middle. It's got lovely. Where are my notes? There's somewhere here. You guys keep asking questions. Here we go. It's got a perfect balance between acidity, alcohol, and lovely texture. And the oak is absolutely beautifully integrated. It's drinking lovely now, and notes of peach and melon, some notes of grapefruit, and I think also there's some works with the lees. I want to ask you some to do with winemaking, lees, and so on. I might have sometimes we'll still have a bit of time, but here the oak is beautifully integrated, and also there's some lees work here. It's got lovely biscuity notes and really lovely drinking. But it's halfway through between the two wines that we tasted previously.
Yeah, and that's that. From your description, I know Covella. I don't know Marquês de Marialva. But from your description, it's where in terms of winemaking, where I want to be, in the middle of those two. So
good. Okay. Now this is a nasty question from Joe. Any idea what style was the first Bucelas the Wine Society bought? Would it be oxidative, or how would it be? I'll give you some time to think, because if we give you some historical facts about Arinto, while Antonio thinks about this question, if he can, and the best person to answer this will be Nuno Cancela. If he's here, he could answer. Maybe not if he was watching us. But in terms of historical facts, Duke of Wellington, he resided in the area from the 1810, 1811, while he was helping to defend the Portuguese territory against the Napoleonic invasions, and he was quite partial to a glass of Bucelas and Arinto. But at the time, the 1810, I have a suspicion that the wines were actually fortified. I don't think there were still wines at the time. I've seen some books saying that someone knows better can share with us. But I've seen the wines were actually they were not still wines. They were almost made like port style. They were fortified, and so I don't know the 1870s, which is 60, 70 years later, if it would have been fortified or would have been still and oxidative. Do you know, Antonio?
I don't know. It can be. It's rational that it is for transportation, as port wine and Marsala, and then all those stories of fortified wines in that time. The wine should be also made in lagares, probably, so oxidative style with skin contact. In Romeira, we have 2 lagares, old ones, So they should be for some fermentation, I believe, and it should be a much more oxidative style than it is today. Of course, no doubt about it. Higher temperatures, more phenolics, more aging capability. They would be drunk probably later in the aging. It would go to bigger oak containers like the ones you see in port wine. And probably sometimes it would be if it doesn't have enough alcohol, they would be fortified. Should be something more in as the needs, I would say, and a little bit here and a little bit there. Should be not as a regular production technique, but it should be some way in the transport. They should add a little bit.
Now we've got a clue here, Teresa. Thank you so much for helping us, because the wine that she has in Alentejo, it's not from Bruxelles, but it's not fortified. So could be there was wine is not fortified. So
okay,
interesting. So I got thank you for your help, everyone. Two quick questions. One is about the versatility and the use of Arinto in gastronomy. I mean, it's quite versatile, isn't it? We can use for most things, from very informal to quite. What is your view?
Completely. You can have the cooler styles in the beginning of the meals, or even before the meals, and then as it ages beautifully and as it has this texture and volume, you can use it with denser food, like oven food, which is an amazing versatile wine. And even if you have the same wine, even if you start with a Morgado and you can play with temperatures and glasses, you could start with a cooler Morgado Santa Catarina at the beginning and then let it warm it up, even decant it, and then have it at a higher temperature towards the middle of the meal. And it will be fun to play. It will be fun to play with that, with temperatures and glasses. It will be a completely different wine.
Antonio, we've got 2 minutes and one more question. Quick question for you. Taking into account climate change and market conditions, so on, where would Arinto be in 10 years' time?
I think Arinto has good features and challenging features to facing climate changes. So acidity, keeping acidity and having a good balance between sugar and acidity, it's a good feature. The tightness of the cluster and extreme events that you see in climate change. Climate change is not about global warming only. You'll see extreme events like heavy rain in the spring or in summer. Those will affect negatively Arinto and the other grape varieties, of course, but Arinto especially because of the tightness of the cluster, and the barrels will have the tendency to explode because they are so tight. And so it will be difficult. In terms of global trends of market, it's if you can manage acidity and you can harvest it a little bit earlier, you can have some very good wines at lower alcohol, which is a good way of addressing the market.
I've got more questions, but I will have to finish. I don't want to be cut off by Instagram. So I just want to thank you so much for your time, your amazing answers, your generosity with your knowledge. And,
thank you, Lucio.
It's been excellent. And I think people who are watching, thank you so much, you guys who've been watching. You've been fabulous with your questions. I'm sorry if I missed any questions. Quite difficult to. I've got my bottles here and listening to you, Antonio. So if I missed any question, I apologize. But we're going to have another masterclass in 2 weeks' time, and we're going to be talking about Baga, and no prizes to anyone who wants to guess who my guest will be, or Mr. Baga. So that's a clue there for you. So thank you very much, Antonio, for all your knowledge today. It's frozen a little bit, and there you are, Antonio.
Dirceu, thanks a lot for the invitation. It was wonderful to talk with you and talk a little bit about Arinto and give Arinto to know to everyone who was with us, and amazing questions. Thank you a lot for the questions, and it's a pleasure always to talk with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All the best.